I need to start where you are on monetary policy and your attitude and your stance there, because growth is falling, expectations are falling, and economists that we talk to, sir, have slashed forecasts for the Philippines. I'm cautious. Why still the cautious approach to loosening policy further?
Well, as you know, we kept the policy rate unchanged, and that's because while the economy has turned the corner, the recovery remains fragile. And I think most analysts who have downgraded the Philippines are looking at past data, because to me, the key to the sustained recovery is a successful vaccine rollout. And there are many reasons for optimism. We expect to get, for example, some 60 million doses before the end of the month. The national government, along with the local governments and the private sector, have shown its ability to administer the vaccination program. For example, from past days where we can only vaccinate 25,000 people per day, we can now administer some 700,000 doses per day. And that's not true for many countries with limited healthcare infrastructure. We also have another source of optimism is we have multiple sources of vaccines, some 7 suppliers: Pfizer, AZ, Moderna, J&J, Sinovac, Sinopharm, Sputnik V. Other countries have only 1 or 2 suppliers. And the other thing is we have very little resistance on the part of Filipinos to get vaccinated. And also there's a very strong private sector support. Some big firms have purchased their own vaccines, and they have administered the job to their employees and the families of their employees. So all in all, I think we're okay. In fact, for the remainder of 2021, we're expecting the arrival of over 148 million doses. And so we're optimistic that before the end of the year, we'll be able to inoculate 70 million Filipinos, or that's the entire adult population, on or before the end of 2021. So to me, that's the key, the pace of vaccination. And once that's up, we'll restore confidence, and the economic activity has actually started. And so we're optimistic.
Governor Diokno, and you mentioned that this R cut that people were signaling that could be happening was not timely, it wasn't justified at the time. Can you then tell us a little bit more about what the next move from the BSP is going to be? Is it more likely a rate hike or a rate cut?
It's more of the same, unchanged. Okay, I think we need to be at this stage. Before, when I assumed office, I said I committed to cutting the RR, reserve requirement ratio, to single digit. At that time, it was 18%, single digit. We're now down to 12%. But since there's still a lot of liquidity in the system, there's no point in cutting the reserve requirement at this time.
Okay, Governor Ben, then, to your point that what's really key, at least for the country, is the vaccine rollout. The growth forecast of I believe, which is 7 to 8% roughly, what is the assumption that goes into that forecast? Is the assumption that you will reach your vaccine targets, and based on that, 7 to 8% will be achievable, or 7 to 8% is more a hope?
No, the revised forecast is 6 to 7%. Okay,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
So 6 to 7%, and we have to hit 8.2% for the second half of the year in order to meet the 6%, right? So that's doable. That's doable. But I said we really have to complete our vaccination program, and that the target is that we will complete the vaccination program on or before the end of this year.
And so you mentioned much will be the same. You mentioned you were going to maintain loose monetary settings for as long as necessary. How long is that runway then, Governor? How long can you stay accommodative on the back of a Fed that is talking about tapering later on this year?
Well, when I said as long as necessary, we have to look at the employment, we have to look at growth. Before the pandemic, we were growing at around 6 to 7%, and the unemployment was around 5%. So maybe unemployment down to 6, and then growth back to 6 to 7%. That would be a signal for us to make the adjustment. Now on the reserve, the Fed taper tantrum, I think that's a different regime. I think right now, when you say emerging economies, they try to lump every emerging economies into one homogeneous group. That's not true. Some emerging economies have large reserves, like the Philippines, and we have very stable exchange rate, and we have stable banking system. So we're not too much affected by the so-called taper tantrum.
Governor Ben, I know you're in touch regularly with the big banks, and obviously the big banks are a way for you guys, obviously, to transmit that monetary policy into the real economy. While you guys are on hold and obviously cautious and supportive of the economy, are there ways that you're looking at to improve that transmission mechanism from what you guys decide on the monetary board, so the regular Filipinos can actually then feel that support that you're giving?
We have the BSP, the Central Bank of the Philippines, is one of the most aggressive support for the economy. We have, for example, infused some 2.2 trillion pesos, or approximately $44 billion to the financial systems to support the system, the economy rather. And that's where I'm coming from, where there's still a lot of liquidity in the system. On the deficit, on the fiscal side, they increased the deficit from 3, that's the usual 3% of GDP, to 7.6, and in fact for this year to around 9.3%. Is that a threat to the fiscal stability? No, because our debt to GDP ratio before the pandemic was below 40%, and we borrow, of course, but it's usually long term, mostly long term. I think 90% long term. So there's no threat to the fiscal stability. So we can do this for a long time. We're prepared to do this for a long time.
And Governor, just got some news from the BSP that you guys gave the green light for 2 more digital bank licenses. I think that brings the total now to 5. Any chance of expanding this program and adding some more?
No, we have decided to keep it at 5, or in fact it's 7, because there are two banks which converted into digital banks. So that's the Overseas Filipino Bank, and there's one rural bank that's converted. So we are keeping it at 7. So I think that's a good enough number so that we do not put pressure on our ability to monitor, because this is a new thing for the BSP. So we keep it at 7.